Oh, hello there, Clayton.
Oh, hey,
We're recording.
we're recording now.
Well,
Okay.
I'm recording. I don't know what you're doing.
I was paying attention to what you were saying right before you said that. That's what I was doing.
Well, thank you for that.
No. Welcome to Lawless podcast with Justin and Clayton. I'm Clayton. I'm in this present moment, and this is my buddy and friend and BFF and brother and co-host Justin.
Thank you for all of that. Yes.
You guys,
So for just so anybody so they understand why we're having this kind of fumble at the beginning, we're using a new program. We're trying out a new program other than
right?
Zoom, and Zoom gives us a real clear recording in progress.
Yeah,
Whereas
there's a lady's voice that says recording in progress.
this one's like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you at 5 seconds that we're recording, and then it's on you."
And then
It's up to
go.
you. I told you once. If you're not going to listen, then good luck.
I didn't hear anything say. Was there a thing that said recording?
No, it was
You
just a cat.
said,
I said it. Yeah.
yeah, you said, "Hey, we're recording," and I was messaging and said, "Uh-huh."
Anyway, so we are recorded. What's up, my friend?
Oh, nothing. Let me get through a couple house notes before we get rolling.
Yes.
First and foremost, on this platform or this distribution platform you're listening, you hear my voice on right now. Go ahead and subscribe, heart, whatever it is. Give us a thumbs up. If you want some interaction, we'll hit on it again later on, maybe in some depth. But on the segments, Lawless Confessionals, Lawless Bible Study, we'll read your comments. Put it in the comments. We'll take them from there. Interaction, community interaction is what we're looking for. And we're going to get it one way or another. We'll hold you down.
We will get it. We will get it one way or the other. Honestly, something that I would love to know is if there are any parts of the episodes that you do or don't like or wish we spent less time on. I mean, I don't know that we'll change it, but I'd be curious what you think. And also, we're going to be trying out some different platforms because some people might not know. They should have seen this coming. But what some people might not know is that we're about to level up.
Yeah, we're leveling up.
And
we're on the come up.
That's right. I don't know that song, but that's right. And so
I'll send it to you after this.
We're going to be trying some just different programs, see what kind of quality we can put out there.
Yeah, we're on the come up. So that was one note, was like, heart, subscribe, engage. Also, our podcast email, podcastlawless@gmail.com. That's going to be another source for you to get in contact with us. And what we're looking for specifically is engagement with the community segments. So like if you Lawless Confessionals, and maybe we can dive into that. Maybe we can introduce that to Mr. Dan later. Lawless Confessionals and Lawless Bible Study.
Can I take the lead on that and do what I used to do to my kids?
For sure. For sure.
We'll do it live and see what he thinks about it.
Okay. Speak of the devil.
And the devil appears. How y'all doing?
Pretty good. So we're introducing the segments, and as we are introducing the segments, what happened? What was that?
My light came crashing down. Carry on.
Okay, as we were I thought you had a break-in, son, a B&E. As we were introducing the segments, Mr. Dan showed up, Dan Hartley. He's going to be our residential expert on some questions we got. I don't know if he's prepared, if he knew he was an expert or not, but we gave him that title. We were introducing two segments that we got. The first one, they're listener-involved segments, so community-involved segments. The first one is Lawless Confessionals, where it's kind of in the vein of get it off your chest. If you want to call in or write in, it's going to be with the podcast email, which is podcastlawless@gmail.com. If you want to write in, and you can be as anonymous as you want. You can even make a burner email account if you want, but you can say, I don't want to be, I don't want you to list my name, or I don't mind if you list my name. But you can confess anything from a little white lie to burying a body in the swamps of Jacksonville. Whatever you want to say. We might be legally bound if we get subpoenaed, but you can take that risk. The other segment that we're introducing is Lawless Bible Study. And that is where you can pick, you, the listener, or it can be you, Mr. Dan. We're going to get the community involved with this. Maybe Original Sinfluencer, T-Bone, Frazier, a blast from the past.
Yeah.
We get Frazier involved, where you give us either a verse, a story from the Bible, maybe something that happened to you. Maybe, we talk about this, and I'm saying it as a way to like take the power away from the trauma. So like maybe you had a bad experience, like we can get into, I lived at a religious children's home. There's bound to have been a couple negative experiences that happened while I was there. When we can break it down, we'll deconstruct it and take the power away from it. We'll do it Lawless style. We'll go over what the original Sunday school version of it was. Like, okay, well, they wanted you to say there was, 6 days and then a day of rest and a talking snake. And then we can deconstruct that if that's what it needs, but we can also maybe apply it to today. Like maybe there wasn't a talking snake, but isn't this representative of like man's choice and world, like his confrontation with temptation and his confrontation with diffusion of power or diffusion of accountability. As soon as he gets a chance to pass the buck, he takes it.
I think that's super important. The deconstruction doesn't always mean blowing something up. Deconstruction can be repurposing something too. And so
that's right.
I think sometimes people hear the term deconstruction and they think, oh, okay, this is.
And they get their armor up.
Yeah, no, it's not about that. It's about different ways to look at it, different ways to apply it. And sometimes I do think there are some things that probably need to be blown up, but that's a case by case basis, and that's not our call. That's whatever you need it to be.
I watched y'all's the other one with the original Sinfluencer, and I heard the word deconstruction several times, and I really like that. I was riding down the road, I'm like, deconstruction. That makes sense, because you're sort of deconstructing things. I like that idea. I really do. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I think one of the best descriptions I've heard for it is Rhett and Link. They do such a good job of explaining what that process. Well, I guess not for everybody it doesn't, but for them, and I think in our experience, what that looks like. If anybody's not familiar with them, you should definitely check them out. And I think Ear Biscuits, is that the name of their podcast?
Ear Biscuits is their empire.
Okay.
But Good Mythical Morning, I think, is the specific podcast that we listen to, but they also have Good Mythical Breakfast and Good Mythical, like that's kind of their naming brand, Good Mythical.
Yeah.
Like they're how we use Lawless.
They're easy to find, but they, in case.
They're huge on YouTube.
In case
if you're under 40, you know them.
In case somebody doesn't know what it is, or maybe they've got a preconceived idea of what people mean when they say a deconstruct, I think these guys have a pretty good explanation of it.
And if it helps, a term that I kind of started using when I talk to a mentor of mine is reconstruction.
Yeah.
So there is deconstruction part of it, but it's also, which is really cool when you consider that this is what we've been doing the whole time, is like instead of reconstruction, also renegotiation. Like I'm renegotiating my relationship with this text, my relationship with this theology, the power I give this theology over me anymore. Like maybe now I'm holding on loosely, maybe now I'm holding on real loosely to whatever's there to take, because I know the hard way that whenever you hold on to a dogma, even when you know that it's not making sense anymore, when your brain is telling you like, hey man, this has betrayed you. This is currently breaking your heart.
Shut up, brain.
Shut up, brain. Shut up, heart. And you still, you're not making the trauma better there at that point. That is a stage in grief, but it's the denial stage. and like I said, I know everyone's situation is different, and everyone's walk is different, but I'd be interested to hear what others feel like, because when original Sinfluencer Joshua Colburn, whenever he was describing his deconstruction, he described it as almost beginning the day he got saved. Because the day he got saved, he was beginning his renegotiation with the rules and his renegotiation with the church, because he wanted his buddies to go to heaven. And the church was saying tattoos and piercing. I don't know what it was specifically, but like definitely in our tradition, it was tattoos and piercings will send you to the lake of fire. And if you got I got family members that got tattoos and piercings and were on the other side. And so like, oh, I want my brother Charles to go to heaven. I hope his Indian ink tattoo won't keep him out of heaven.
You know, something that I wish that I'd thought of it in the moment. I wish that I'd have made a comment about his long hair and how nature itself teaches us that it's a shame for a man to have long hair.
It's a shame.
For a woman, it's her glory, but for a man, it's a shame. And I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
That was one of the prime reasons I didn't get to have long hair as a kid, as a teen.
He stitches in some of his old, because he was making content when he was still in the church, when he was still a youth pastor, or when he was still a music minister. And I've seen one video of his where he stitched in like some of his old content from when he was in the church, and he didn't have long hair. He had like a high, like a hard, I guess it would be a hard part, but definitely a high fade.
Okay.
And like, that swoop, but it was going up back there.
Faux hawk?
Looked like, yeah, a wide faux hawk, and
Okay.
like definitely sculpted into place.
Like the guy from Righteous Gemstones?
Yes. The Johnny Bravo's hair.
Okay.
Johnny Bravo.
Love that show, by the way.
he had Johnny Bravo with the high and tight. Hey, we're beating around the bush. Dan Hartley has decided to grace us with his presence. Mr. Dan, how are you doing,
I'm
sir?
good,
Dan the man.
Good. Just staying busy all the time, No rest for the weary or the wicked in my case.
Right.
Yeah, much better. Okay.
Well, hey, we have invited Mr. Dan on to be, I kind of hinted at it earlier, to be our residential expert. And we're not expecting him to honestly know all the questions, but he has, and I'll let him explain this for himself later or here in a sec, but he has been behind the curtain. He has seen the goings-ons of politics. Much like in the military, there's the movie version and then there's the real life version. Like, I'm sure there's the Fox News, CNN version of the politics that we see. And now there's the podcast, social media version of the politics we see. But then there's the real life. There's everyone behind the scenes that are making it happen. And from what I understand, Mr. Dan, you have experience in that world. Is that right?
I do. I won't mention who I work for, but I'll just tell you that I worked for 5 years for the Florida House of Representatives. I worked for a member, and then I worked for about 2.5 years for a member of Congress. And so, yeah, I got about almost 8 years experience working in politics. So, yeah.
So, do I understand it right? Is that was a state elected official and then a state like federal representative?
U.S. Congresswoman.
U.S. Congresswoman. Okay, cool. So like I said, behind the scenes. And what we're going to be going down is tonight, I don't know if you knew this, Mr. Dan, but Thanksgiving has already happened. How do you think your Thanksgiving went?
It went well. We had a great time, a lot of turkey. Yeah, I did.
That's right. This is kind of name it, claim
right?
it.
Yeah,
name it, claim it stuff.
manifest it.
Yeah, manifest it. This is going to be coming out a week after Thanksgiving.
Okay, all right.
We should talk about we should talk about the current events that are currently happening today, a week after Thanksgiving.
Well, let's do it. What we want to get to, we'll do a real wide weave, and the weave can take its own space if it needs to. But what I want to get back to is some conspiracy theories we can just pick apart. Me and Justin will give our bro science version, and Mr. Dan, you can give us your angle on some conspiracies. Specifically, I'm looking for behind the curtain conspiracies in the church, which might not be too radical, but it's definitely going to be in the vein of this show and in the vein of our audience. and in the vein of our expertise, even some conspiracies, theories within the church, and I'll break that down more later, what I mean by that, and also the good old American conspiracies. So conspiracies anywhere from JFK to Operation Popeye to, you know what I mean, dead people voting in elections, things like that.
That never happened.
Well, I was making a joke that we could assume what kind of current events were going to be happening a week from today, which
a week
would be
from today, from after.
Right, because you're going to be hearing this a week after Christmas or after Thanksgiving. We're saying it a week before Thanksgiving.
There's already been some disclosures from the Epstein documents, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. At least a lot more talking heads are going to be discussing the Epstein disclosures, maybe what that means.
And MTG has resigned from Congress.
She sure did.
Feel like,
this is going to be late news by then.
Yeah, it'll be late. Well, a lot of people feel like she's going to run for president. So
I was going to guess governor first of Georgia, but man, she could.
Yeah, that could be true. I think she would.
She's real America first, and it seems like, I mean, we can get into this. This was going to be one of the questions: is there a civil war going on in MAGA right now? In America First?
Yeah, there seems to be.
There seems to be a civil war going on in MAGA and in the America First movement, which is kind of what I call it. What are the branches? Like, J-Dub, do you know what's going on with Civil War breaking up? You've kind of left the scene since then.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing stuff on Threads and on TikTok. I'm not really getting into the news that much, but I have seen that I saw that Trump abruptly and completely turned on Marjorie Taylor Greene when she called him out. Like, he basically gave her the boot from what I could see. Is that accurate? Did he not turn on her?
No, he did. He did turn on her. From what I understood, she didn't vote a certain way that he thought she should have, and it might have been on the budget, might have been the government. I'm not really sure, but yeah, he turned on her, and then she turned on him pretty quickly too. So she had quite a following, And I think a lot of times when you see people like MTG get into a race to run for president, they know they're not going to win. She's not going to get the Republican nomination, but what she's going to do is she's going to bring enough people with her that when they start forming the government, hopefully she gets a piece of it to bring her people over to their camp. So that's the reason a lot of people run for president. It's not necessarily to win, but to get recognized enough that they get a like a secretary post or maybe anyway, something.
Well, I know something that could help her out in the future if she does decide to do that is the third party and the kind of independent-minded conservatives that fell in with America First and MAGA in this election and maybe the last couple elections. But like, I know with the libertarian movement, and we haven't hit that magical 5%, at least I don't think. We haven't hit that magical 5% of the vote where it's an established third party everywhere, but it is on the ballots. It is on the ballot, or at least here in Alabama. Yeah. It was in Georgia, and it was in Kansas. I'm a registered Libertarian Party
I was
member.
Too, and then about 6 or 7 years ago, I get a letter from my supervisor of elections here in town, and they said there is no more Libertarian Party, and I had two choices, and it was like, heaven or hell. And so I chose heaven. I could never go with the Liberal Party, so I said I'll just be Republican. But I'm at my core, I'm a Libertarian.
Yeah. It almost seems like an American ideal. At least that's how I romanticize it in my head. But
it almost seems like it's the right thing to do. It's so weird.
I mean, it's the one that makes most sense to me.
Right. Well, it's just like my personal opinion is. We lose more people from alcohol-related deaths every year than all the drugs combined. And so yet we criminalize drugs and we put people in prison because of it. Now, I don't use drugs. I don't smoke marijuana. I've done it before. I've tried it. And I did inhale. And I didn't like it. And, I don't have a problem with people. I got my neighbors on both sides smoke it all the time. And, I don't have a problem with that. I think we should legalize drugs and stop trying to worry about, giving everybody a trophy.
Right.
We've done so much wrong to our country by trying to protect and be the nanny state that we've we've really gone way too far to protect people from themselves. And we've told a lot of people, we've told a huge population in our country, we don't trust you to handle your affairs financially. So all we're going to do is we're
For
going to take care
sure.
of you, and we're going to reward you for bad behavior. And then we're gonna give you free health care, and we're going to give you free this, we're going to free that. All you have to do is just keep having more democratic babies. And so because of that, we've gotten into a place where we want to tell everybody what to do. So there's a perception of freedom in America, but we really don't have the freedoms that we think we have, which is
They're definitely slipping away, it seems
yeah, I
like.
think so.
There would have been a time not that long ago where I would have believed that the nanny state existed to keep the citizens safe. I don't think I don't give them that much credit anymore. I don't think that it's for my safety. I think that it's for their control.
Yeah,
I,
It's
not that smart.
always
I really, yeah, I really don't think that it's about keeping people safe from themselves as much as keeping other people enriched
Right.
and
well. This is
in
a
control.
theme. This is a theme that crosses both of those, I guess, subjects of conspiracy theory groups that we want to talk about: the church and the government.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's always a small group of people that want to control everyone else.
exactly
And
right.
to do that, they'll control the narrative, they'll control the truth, they'll tell you how you're supposed to think about what this is, they'll tell you how you're supposed to feel about it. And at the end of the day, one we call preacher and one we call representative. We're still choosing our church, especially nowadays when I feel like maybe politics or identity politics, and not like the big I identity politics, but I guess putting your identity in your politics kind of thing, has taken the place of religion for a lot of
Oh,
people,
absolutely.
has taken the place of the church.
Absolutely, because Clayton. I mean, you're either in that church, that is your social construct, or it's not.
Yeah,
And if you're in
that's right.
church, because church is a recruit and retain. That's what church is.
Yes.
Recruit and retain, recruit and retain. And the reason they do that is because funding. Every church is a corporation. Every church is a kingdom. And every kingdom has a king and a queen. You know,
Mhm.
and I've seen that in many churches where the pastor rules with the iron fist. And he gets away with whatever he wants to get away with. He does whatever he wants to do, or she, whichever. And the same with
Man,
politics. You know,
I don't want to derail this entire conversation, but I think you and I could talk specifically about our old denomination.
Yes, yeah.
with, with that, and that would also kind of depends on how comfortable you are talking about
I
that.
don't have a
But
problem with it. Let's
like,
open it up.
well, with the changes that happened, and this, we're kind of talking to a small group, like inside baseball, but I think there's been different versions of this in lots of different denominations. But this is something that we experienced. Was the group home that I lived at went through this big, and the group home that I lived at was part of the denomination Church of God. Or yeah, I don't know if we need to bleep that out. We can talk about that, I guess. Shouldn't need
I don't
to.
think.
I mean,
I mean,
that's true. It's nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a matter of fact. It was part of the Church of
Right.
God Home for Children. At one point it was the campus for the church's college. Before the college moved to Cleveland, the original Church of
I didn't
God's
know that.
campus was the Homes
Hmm.
campus. The old dorms was the college dorms.
Really?
Before those got knocked down. Yeah. It was in some book Miss Edna had of the history of Church of God.
That's
They talked
I
about
hadn't
that.
heard in a while.
Yeah. But that went through a big restructuring, and something that, of course, I didn't have a problem with there because I never looked at it with a critical mind. But the amount of fundraising, and it seems like kind of power distribution and power gobbling that was always going on behind the scenes.
Politics.
This was my experience, and I can only speak about my experience, but I have to assume that other people had similar situations. My mom was a single dishwashing lady. My dad was a felon. He was in prison when I was born, and he was in prison, most of my life until he passed away. Well, my mom, I was born in 84. My mom never got a check from my dad. My dad was always incarcerated, or he was on the run, or, he was kind of just doing his thing. He was kind of a good time Charlie when he was around, but he usually wasn't around. But my mom never got a penny. I know for a fact, because I heard from the horse's mouth, that when my mom signed over custody of me to the home, because they're state place and private place. I was private placement. I was from another state. My dad was incarcerated, and they knew the system. They knew the forms to fill, where they started getting a check from the state of Oklahoma because my dad was incarcerated, my child support check. And also, I know my mom can no longer claim me on her taxes because she wasn't supporting me anymore. She couldn't claim me on her taxes. And, for a single dishwashing lady, that was a big part of her yearly income, was her tax return. That was when we bought our school clothes. That was when we did lots of things, was with that tax return. Those tax benefits absolutely went to the denomination. So, like, not only was my family, like I said, I'm only talking about my view. I was taken away from my family for good or for worse. And I would say mostly for better, in the grand scheme. But I was taken away from my family. My family was more fractured than it was before. We didn't receive whatever financial benefits we could have received, was now going to this big denomination. And on top of that, I would travel every other week, every 3 weeks for this organization to go do my testimony at a church in wherever, traveling with leadership of this place to raise more money for this place. The whole mission of this thing, it seems like the kids weren't the mission. The whole thing was money, and the kids was just the juice this one particular leg that this great big machine had many legs of generating money. They were always doing missions. The Church of God still has its hands. Mission trips all around the world. They're always raising money for missions. They're always raising this. They're always building this. They're always doing that. So it's always on top of your tithe, which is the minimum 10%. We can never agree on a percentage, but it's minimum 10.
Yeah.
It's on top of your tithe. We're raising money for this and that, and we can get into it more. But that was my experience at the home. What's up?
Let me ask you this: where did that start? At what level do you think it began to be about money? Because you've got house parents that they're not getting rich, right? They're truly in ministry. They're trying to make a difference. Who's above them? Like, who's making out with cash? Is it the leadership of the denomination?
I would say,
Well,
from my experience, it's the director of the home who is making, I'm sure, 6 figures or more. The assistant director. Then you had the state overseer, and you have the Holy City Cleveland, where they sit on the main throne.
That was our Mecca.
Yeah,
That's our
exactly.
Mecca.
We pray towards Cleveland, and so I would say that there was a lot of people who were making tons and tons of money at the top, because I mean, what looks better, going down the street to your neighbors and doing a mission down there, or going to some country where they're bloated and their flies are in their eyes? I mean, let's just be honest.
Right.
It's just like with these cancer commercials, you know. Let's put the little ball-headed kid out there with the IV in their head, and you're going to raise money for it. Okay, billions and billions of dollars have been raised for cancer research, and yet we still haven't found a cure for it. I think that's another conspiracy we can get on too. But the church is the same way. It's like with Joyce Meyer. She raised, I think, been years ago, but she was averaging $80 million a year. She's bringing in. Okay, and then you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? When is enough enough? We spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per child to go overseas to tell them about Jesus when nobody knows their neighbor down the street. And so,
well, that's another thing too. The frustration that I have with churches today is that I want to volunteer to do actual help in the community. Like, I live in the Gulf. Like, man, you'd think there'd be lots of like hurricane relief ministries in the churches, because I've heard about things like that. Or, we used to do something kind of like, I don't know if they do it anymore, but where they hand out loaves of bread to the community. Now, we'd make sure we beat you over the head with guilt and punishment and, invite you to church first. But but still, we're doing something. There was food drives, there was pantry, things like that. These big churches aren't even doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I want to help out with things like that, and they don't even have it.
Listen, I know a church who spent $500,000 for a screen to go up on their stage. Okay, church has become a concert, an entertainment venue, and every Sunday is a drive. It's like the telethon, when Jerry Lewis used to come on, and so every Sunday is to raise money. But you look at it and you're like, okay, well, why is my tithe going to pay for $500,000 or $500,000 worth for a screen? Why do we need that? Jesus sells on his own. You don't need to enhance Jesus, but we feel like we need to.
Man, I was going to a church. Justin, I promise I'm going to give you a breath to talk here in a second. But I was going to a church in Georgia. I was going to a couple different churches, a couple different kind of mega churches. But I was going to one where the preacher was a Pentecostal guy, used to be Church of God, but I think he's like non-denominational now, but he was from Cleveland. He preaches twice every Sunday. He'll preach in Atlanta, then he'll get in his private plane and fly to Los Angeles to preach this. Yes, to preach the same sermon with now in a jean jacket and in Converses in LA.
You're saying this is happening present day?
Every Sunday he'll do, and it's not even in Atlanta. It's like where I used to live, which is like over an hour outside, like over an hour away from the airport. He'll have this big production every Sunday where it's thousands of people. I don't know how many, like I wouldn't say it's more than 2,000, but it's right there. Like it's more than 1,000 people, and like up to 2,000 people crammed in here. It's always a circus, checking your kid in and out of the petting farm zoo that they have, and then getting like literally finding an usher begging an usher to find a seat, that you and your wife can shuttle to sit between two strangers that you have no connection with, and you have zero connection with this big place. He'll do like fog machines, lasers, the show. Original Influencer was on here, Josh, and he talked about the $1 million sound system that he had at his church. I know for a fact the sound system at this church in Atlanta was over $1 million. It was lined with those giant amps that are like, I don't know what the inch size is, but go up to your hip, like hip level amps. The stage was lined with that, and then they had rows of it in the ceiling. He would do that, get on his private jet, drive to Atlanta, get in the airport, and does this currently, did it today, and flies to Los Angeles, gives the sermon there, but this time holding the Starbucks and wearing a jean jacket and wearing Converses.
I don't want to say that you're wrong.
And this is not a young guy.
I'm not calling you out. You're telling me you can prove this? His
name is Jensen Franklin, and he
seriously does this
every single Sunday. Every single Sunday, he has a podcast on leadership that, man, I listened to. I haven't listened to it in a while, but I listened to because he does give good nuggets for leadership and kind of like business management, because that's what he's doing. Is he's running a multi-million-dollar business, but he talks about his struggles as a leader, and that's when he describes. Like, man, sometimes my wife has a flu and I decide I got to leave her in Atlanta, and the Spirit will tell me, this trip ain't for you, Susan. So I got to get on my flight and just go to LA without her. And, that's when I get the help from the Spirit, because Susan ain't there to do it.
I wonder if he knows about
all of them.
Has anybody told him about the internet, or about like you could record, or you could even just live stream?
You can live stream. And I know for a fact, because they've been interviewed on here, these campuses have their own pastor. Like, just because you're like, it's so many things, but it's the massive stroking of the ego where he's saying, I am so holy, I'm so important. And really, you're just raising money to be the star of your show, to be the star of your own universe. But I have to do this giant multi-million-dollar production every week in Atlanta. Then I have to get on a plane and fly. I don't know what it costs, but it's thousands of dollars, in fuel every week there and back. Fly to LA, which this doesn't have to be your main concern, but it's not very environmentally conscious to fly in a jet just for yourself.
It's not very environmentally aware.
It's not. You have a huge butthole carbon footprint doing that.
I want to throw something out here. A couple things.
Go ahead.
So I currently attend a church that has multi-site. I think there's 43 campuses where the pastor, it's not a live stream, but it's a broadcast. And
it's a very big broadcast.
And we have local pastors, like maybe once a month or once every quarter. I don't know. They preach or they rotate, whatever. But here's the thing: like if AC/DC if they want to have an awesome sound system and they spend $1 million on it,
just by mentioning that band, but keep on going.
Antichrist Devil Children.
Yep.
Like I'm okay with that.
Right.
The problem that I have is don't tell me that bass is the Holy Spirit.
Right.
It's okay if it's a great production. I want a good production. I love concerts. I love
that's the
production
thing is
value.
AC/DC is up front that they're putting on a show.
It's a show.
You're going to AC/DC to see,
yes.
Angus jump around the stage and on one foot and do he's still doing that as an old man.
Actually, so I had mentioned last week that I think that the first step in my deconstruction was hell. But even as I'm sitting here now, I think I would actually take it a step back. And there was one Sunday in particular where we used to have this was a different church that wanted to be the church that I go to now. Like they emulated them. They wanted everything, whatever. And we had a very good band. And I think that the lead singer could have been a successful commercial artist. I don't know. But one Sunday, they did this thing where they said, everybody close your eyes. I'm going to count to 3. When I count to 3, the Holy Spirit's going to come in this place and you're going to release everything, blah, blah, blah. And so he counts down 1, can you feel it? 2, blah, 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 and 3, and everybody starts cheering. And I thought, and this is when I was still a full believer, I thought to myself, whatever this is not supernatural.
Is not the Holy Spirit.
We literally are, you're working people in a frenzy, which I'm okay with. I think that's fine. But call it like it is. Just tell the truth. This isn't supernatural. This isn't the Holy Spirit. You didn't just summon what I then believed was the Holy Spirit.
This is emotional manipulation.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's okay if I know that if I'm going to a TED Talk, I expect to be emotionally manipulated. If I'm going to some sort of a drama, I want to be manipulated. That's why I'm going. I want to change how I feel. So the question that I've got for you is, if that's what it is, which I do think is what it is it okay? Like if somebody's willing to...
Oh, man, I was wondering if it was just me.
Oh, we lost him.
It's all right.
I understand what he's saying. I totally get it. It's like you expect to be manipulated. I pay good money to go to Disney. I pay good money because I want to... He's back. Okay. We lost you there for a second, Justin. Sorry.
The question that I want to leave you with is, if you're okay with spending your tithe in order to get a feeling that we look at it and we say, it's manipulation. Like there's nothing supernatural about that. What do you think about that? If somebody's willing to pay for it, is that to each their own, do you think? I'm going to hook this up and see if I can get a better signal.
Okay.
It reminds me of a movie that I saw years ago with Steve Martin. It's called Leap of Faith. Did you ever see it?
Okay. It doesn't. I don't remember it.
He plays a evangelist who goes around with a tent revival, and at one point the sheriff is telling him that he's basically a crook, and he goes, you got people spend $100 on Broadway to watch a show, and they walk away with a good tune in their heart, and they feel good about themselves. He said, I'm no different. I give them,
That's
make them
right.
feel good. They walk away with a tune in their heart. They, blah, 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 blah. And, he was kind of saying what we all know is going on, but he just
Yeah. He's saying it out loud.
exactly. And so I think that, I'm not okay with it. And that's why I don't go to church, because I feel like I'm being manipulated. I feel like I'm being, uh, controlled. And, there's that aspect of being shunned if you don't agree with that, or,
Yes.
they'll be nice to you in the grocery store, but they're just, they'll walk away saying, "Oh, he's so lost, bless his heart,"
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So no, I'm not okay with that. I don't mind paying for it with the expectation, the clear expectation that I'm going to Disney World to be manipulated. The music, the lighting, the ambiance, everything. I'm okay with that.
Well, especially when, I don't want to say this, almost, it's going to sound real judgmental, and it kind of is on face value, but I don't mean it to be insulting, I guess. I don't mean it to be insulting. But whenever I hear the preacher give a sermon that I know he's even giving the normal version wrong, like he's bending this scripture way out of place to try to make it mean something he doesn't, I'll hear that throws me off. Well, also, whenever I hear the preacher do a sermon that maybe he doesn't know, well, he should. Like I heard another big preacher I heard in Atlanta, a different mega church that I was going to. I actually went to this one for a while. He was talking about John, or he was talking about John in the New Testament, and he did the same thing that a lot of preachers do. And I don't know where you're at on this, but I've heard different things from different theologians. But he made this argument that John, he contributed him as the same author of all the books of John in the Bible. Like John, the book of Revelation was also John, Jude, was also the first book of John. He made that leap, which I think biblical historians have been out of favor with that for over 100 years, have been out of favor with that theory. But also, he said, he made the comment at one part in the sermon about how all the disciples were uneducated, illiterate, and they only spoke Aramaic, which is probably true. But then he goes through his sermon, and at the end, which was insulting, he said, and this is one of the most prolific authors of the first century church. We're like, well, what could it be, Andy? Is he an illiterate fisherman, or is he the most prolific author of, or one of the most prolific authors of the first century church? Because either way, we're going on more historical tradition. At the best light, it's historical tradition. There's not a lot of historical evidence for these claims, and it like I said, it's an insult to my intelligence at that point. That's one of the things that I have a hard time following. And the production is an insult to the evidence, and it seems like I'm the only one that picks it up. But then when I talk about it with other people, they're like, "Oh no, obviously." It's just a tool of manipulation. But at the time, I'm like, am I the only one picking this shit up?
No, you're not the only one, because it's like when you go, like years ago, they were talking about the sermonette, the 20-minute sermonette, because someone had figured out that most people will
I remember
20
that.
minutes and then that's it. And so they'd have a clock on the back wall, and they were going to make sure they stuck that clock. But they would have the concert first, and then you'd have all of your pretty singers and your best voices up on front stage, and then you'd have the fat ugly people in the back in the choir, and they'd be singing. They'd have their mics down, and then the pastor would come out, and they'd have all the announcements and everything, and they'd build him up, and all of a sudden it's like Elvis coming out on the stage, and then the pastor his little spiel, and then he gives his interpretation of what he thinks the scriptures say, and then we're just to take that at face value because he's the pastor. This is
no question,
right? You don't tell me what I can or cannot say. And my dog's shaking my table. I'm sorry. So it's like, if I question him, or if I say this seems a little manipulative to me, but I used to play praise and worship, so I know I will manipulate you with certain chords. And if the
Of
pastor's
course.
saying something, we'll get on that thing a little bit more. And then somebody,
Uh-huh.
and you got the bass player over there, and all of a sudden people start to feel the spirit, and it's all manipulation. And I used to do it, and it works
Yeah.
because it's a formula. It works, and that's what church has become. It's become a formula. It's an industry. It's a corporation, whatever you want to call it. It's a formula. It's like baking a pie. You put all the ingredients in there. Every single time you're going to have a pie in there. You can open the oven and say, "Gosh, I hope it's an apple pie." No, we made a pumpkin pie, and it's always going to be a pumpkin pie. But that's just the way it is, and it works.
Yeah.
And that's why when people recreate, I've had people say, "Well, we're leaving this church and we're going to start our own church and we're going to do our own thing, and we're not going to do it this way. And we're not going to do it that way." And then they end up doing it the exact same way that they left.
The exact same.
Yeah, because that works. It's like the Hallmark Channel. It's a formula. Disney did the same thing. Give me 1 second, my dog.
But if you, and Clayton, I can address this to you. But if it works, and if you want your spirits uplifted, you want to be among community, you want.
Right.
I didn't stick around for the answer to the question. What do you think about that? Like, as long as you go into it knowing that to take it for what it's worth, understand that there might not be anything super, or maybe it's all supernatural. I don't know. But do you think that you just go into it with eyes wide open, knowing that I'm good?
Well, now that's the only thing you can do. But, this has kind of been our message, with emotional health and with this deconstruction process or theology or life in general. It's a difference between being in the passenger seat and being told what to believe. And then you have this transformation moment. Call it whatever you want. Paul's road to whatever. We call it a deconstruction. You have this big change where something happens. What I was going to say is now you have control of it. Yeah, you move from the passenger seat to the driver's seat, and now you have control. Usually it's after that big transformation moment. So like now I can go to church, and instead of being manipulated, instead of unknowingly falling in with, there's the upbeat song, then there's the slow song, then there's going to be pray, or then there's going to be tithe, and then there's going to be someone's going to come on, and unknowingly falling for the formula, falling for the trick. Now I can go in there and I say, I have a relationship with what I call God that is unlike anybody else's relationship, just by nature. It's like anyone else's relationship. It can be something similar, but it's not my relationship with that. Even with the relationship I have with that word God has changed from then to now. So, you know what I mean? I can still go into I don't go to a First Baptist church, but I can go to the First Baptist church down the street and sit through their praise and worship. And instead of being manipulated by their formula, I can have my own experience, and which is what I aim to do, because I still take my family to church sometimes. We fire churches pretty quick.
Yeah.
We're on our third church here. But I go there with the goal of having my own spiritual experience. And I also want a community of, somewhat good morals, somewhat good values to have my kids around without too much social engineering. At least it's not guns and hose, but even that's 40 years old now.
Yeah.
But
but
now I'm in the driver's seat.
You go for the socialization of it and the community of it is what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is okay. That's fine, because you're not going to get it any other way, because
right.
I've found from experience that when you leave a church, you leave that community behind. Even though you live in the community and you run into them from time to time, and they all have your number and they all have your your Facebook account. Nobody ever says, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Just checking on you." Because if you're not in the circle, if you haven't drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, then nobody really wants to talk to you anymore, because you know what? You might have a different idea that doesn't conform with the idea of the social construct that they have at the church where they are. And that could be a scary thing. Pastors don't like people who have independent thought. They want you to think outside they don't want you to ask difficult questions like, you realize the Bible's been rewritten, 400 times. They've added words to it to make it make sense. I'm not saying it's not real, but I'm just saying there's questions that we need to ask that, it's like, do you really go to hell? Can you once saved, always saved? I mean, there's things that, they don't want you to ask. They just want you to sit there, enjoy the show, pay the fee, and leave with
Mhm,
a good
mhm.
tune in your heart. That's it.
That's the base price of admission.
Yeah.
Because there's higher tiers, right? Because
Absolutely.
then we might want you involved in this
Leadership.
operation. We might want
Oh,
want
yeah.
you to even start influencing the next
And
generation.
they have their
Like
own
we might want
vernacular. Let's get you plugged in,
yes.
which is a nice way of saying, let's get you to work for us for free. So we don't have
Oh yeah.
because we need to pay the pastor, we need to pay the assistant pastor and the director of music and all these people. But we want you to do it for free. And if you don't do it for free, we're going to make you feel very, very guilty for not doing this for the Lord because the Lord needs that. Which
Oh yeah.
it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Well, I mean, to the point to where if you don't follow these rules that they make, they according to them, you're going to
You're done.
hell, son.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
Dan was
Bless his
devastated.
heart.
Can
Dan
you pass out some bulletins before you go? Can you hold? Can you take?
yeah.
But I want to say that I had a very frank conversation with one of my pastors this past week, and I was met with absolute grace. So that has not been my experience with the church at all up until this point. So much so that I really kind of expected him to be like, "Ooh, that's a bridge too far. Sorry, buddy, you're out." And that was not my experience in this most recent conversation. I think you're 100%, 99% correct, Dan. I think that is the description of most American evangelical churches. But I do think that there are some people that, at least this guy that I met with the other day, I think that there are some people that aren't afraid of those questions, but I think they're pretty few and far between.
Well, let me just say, I think that 99% of the people in the church are good people who believe that their role, whether it's at the information desk, whether it's outside, parking you this way, it doesn't matter. They believe that they're doing something in the ministry for God, and that's where the key. That's where it has to happen. You have to keep the people below you in believing
True
in
believers.
that's right. You have to keep them believing in the process because that pastor knows that there's a formula and he follows that formula like he's making crack cocaine. It's exactly the same stuff every single time. Because if you keep giving them crack, they're going to keep coming back. And that's the way it is. And I believe that 99% of the people in the church don't understand this. But it's amazing that as we get older, and here's that word again, and we deconstruct the things that we thought we knew. We deconstruct those foundational beliefs that we were raised on, and all of a sudden now we're questioning. Okay, would God really send someone to hell to burn forever and ever and ever? Well, that just doesn't compute with me because that doesn't compute with the God that loves me so much that He'd send His only Son to die for me. And there's all kinds of things in there that I've got questions about that nobody else
It has to be deconstruction because what else do you call it? Like you said it perfectly. When you remove foundational parts of your identity, of your theology, of your understanding of the world, like sorry, just deconstruction is it. Like if
perfect description.
Yeah, and like I said, like we've said before, is that should not be taken as an attack. I mean, maybe it should be taken as a critique.
It's a good thing.
Yeah,
It's benign.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
benign. It just simply indicates that I've taken something that I built, this foundation. I've broken it up. I've cracked. I've removed it all the way down to the dirt, and now I'm starting over with a new vision, a new view. And it's funny to me that when I was younger, I never questioned stuff like this. I was part of the sheep. I was the ones who believed that no matter what I did, no matter what I did in the church, that it was ministry and that I was making a difference. And when I went to mission fields, and when I was preaching, when I was bringing people to evangelize and everything like that, I thought I'm doing exactly what God wants me to do. I never questioned it because it was too difficult for me to switch that paradigm. And it wasn't until I became old enough that I heard things that just went, that just doesn't make sense to me. You're telling me that Jesus loves me, but then He's got this pit of fire, and it's just things like that that just didn't make sense to me. And that you're going to tell me that I can go to hell for cussing, or I can go to hell for smoking, or I can go to hell for drinking, or I can go to hell for all these things. Well, then why did Jesus come? Because if He came to die for me, and yet there's these little trip ups, these little mistakes that I can make, is going to send me to hell, then Jesus should have stayed. He should have stayed in heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Clayton, I sent you this message earlier, but I'm just now seeing that even though you are on the TikTok, which if I had my sound effects, I'd give you a big round of applause here.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get him set up on this app here, but I sent you a message. You need to accept my message request and watch it. This lady is called Queen Erin, and that's one word, Queen Erin the First, and she is so funny at breaking down what we're actually talking about, and specifically what you're talking about, Dan, where she talks about, let me explain it to you. You see, God loves you so much that he put this thing inside of you called sin, and he loves you so much that if you don't choose him, then he's going to burn you forever for eternity with no chance of escape, because
he literally made it your nature.
Yeah.
You have to fight your very nature.
So the one that I sent you, Clayton, was about Sodom and Gomorrah, and how she's just explaining the story as it's actually written. And when you hear it from, of course, I'm already deconstructed, but when you hear it in that explained like that, it's just like, holy cow. Like, it's just,
dude,
when you hear it,
the real story of Sodom and Gomorrah broken
any
down,
of them,
he threw out his daughter,
and
they trampled her,
and he's
tore her to a pulp.
He's like, here, have her.
Clearly,
take her.
She was property. She's less than human. Yeah. Take her. And the real sin, I think it's mentioned later on in the Bible, but Dan McClellan points this out. The real sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was their xenophobia. They didn't treat their guests well. Yeah. They were inhospitable to their guests.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
Yep.
Not that
it wasn't the gays.
They were
the murder,
right,
the sexual assault.
Right. Yeah.
Or the extreme violence.
Yeah. So hey, we're 59 minutes into the podcast right now. We've talked a lot about religion. We need to make sure that we talk about some of your experience with politics. And so I'd like to start us off, if we're able. I'll leave it to you, Clayton, to wind this up how you want, and then we'll transition.
No, I think we're at a good spot. We spent about an hour, which is pretty natural for us. That stays in our vein. But yeah, we can transition. Mr. Dan, what do you want to tell us about your experience, or J-Dub?
Well, I grew up in a home with Democrats. My mom and dad were both what we'd call back in the day Dixiecrats, if you've ever heard that term. It was a term to refer to Southern Democrats who were, not really as liberal as today's Democrats were. They'd probably be considered Republicans today. But at any rate, I grew up in a sort of non-political household. And as I got a little older, I started watching the news. My grandfather made me watch the news, and I'd watch Walter Cronkite, and I'd watch the Vietnam War, and I'd watch those caskets come home with the American flag on it. And I began to wonder as a kid, why are we even in Vietnam? Why are we there? What is Vietnam offering us? And then I didn't realize until I got a little bit older. But as I became an adult, I became very involved in politics. I loved it. I loved watching it. It was my blood sport. And every 4 years when a presidential election came around, it was like I was glued to the TV.
How old were you when that started happening?
I was an adult. As an adult, when I really got involved in politics, from watching it to really try.
Were you really into politics when you were a house parent at the home?
I was by the news. I watched the news a lot, and I watched the players, all the players. I was interested in the players, and but I didn't really get involved in it until later when I ran for Congress. I don't know if you ever knew that, but I actually ran.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I learned a lot. I learned how much I didn't know. And later, of course, I had a friend of mine call me. I was traveling as a nurse, and a friend of mine called me. He said, "I'm running for office." And I said, "Why in the hell would you want to do that?" And he said, "Well, I think I could win." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." He's like, "I'd like for you to help me, And I'm like, "I know nothing about politics, nothing." He's like, "Well, I need some help." And I said, "Well, I'm on a travel assignment up in New Hampshire. I'll be done in July. I'll give you a call if you're still interested. I'll come back and take a couple of months off, and I'll help you run your campaign." So he's like, "Yeah, I need some help. So I come back in July, and he's like, "Yeah, I need your help. So I come back. I take a couple of months off, call my recruiter, say, "Look, put me on hold for a couple of months. I'm just going to take some time off, help a friend of mine get elected." So I came down and helped him run a state representative position. And so I came down and helped him, and it looked like he was going to lose. The guy that that he was running against, you couldn't sling a dead cat and not hit a sign in the area that we had 5 counties we covered. And so I just didn't think he was going to make it. Well, he did make it, and he won. And he's like, you want to come to work for me? I'm like, what would I do? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, find out what I can do. And so he did. And then he tells me, he said, you could be basically my field rep. Um, and at the time I was called district secretary, which had nothing to do with answering the phones. And so he said, I said, well, what can you pay me? He said, well, I don't know. I have to find that out because this is all new to me too. So he told me, and I'm like, is that a week? And he goes, no, that's a month. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord. So I had to kind of take a step back. And I said, well, politics is something I've always been interested in. So I said, well, I'll do it. And, if I have to supplement my income, work as a nurse part-time, I'll do that too. Anyway, ended up working for him. I learned a lot about politics. I learned a lot about people. People are politics. Okay. Politics.
Yeah.
And so what I learned in politics was that it's not what you think it is. It's all about pay to play. If you gave a lot of money to the campaign, if you contributed money to the campaign, then you were a stockholder. You were what they called a stockholder. You expected the ears and eyes of your representative, and depending on however much money you gave is how much time you got with the representative. I learned that it is all about the money. It's all about the prestige, and every politician wants to be relevant. They all want to be relevant, no matter what they're doing. They want to be relevant. They want to be always at the front of anything. And
so would you say that these donors, these people that are paying to play, would you say that they have a certain amount of power or sway over that elected official?
Absolutely. And people can say, well, I'm going to go there and I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to, yeah. And the business guys and the ones that financed your campaign are saying, sure you are. When we call you, you're going to do exactly what we tell you to do. And that's how it works.
That's right.
Because there would be times when I would be asked a question, and the representative would ask me, did they contribute to our campaign? Or, and I'd say, well, yeah, they did. They, blah, okay, yeah, let's give them some time. And that's the way it works. And so, the people, the regular folks like us, like you and I, we don't really have a voice. They do this legislative delegation every year where they all get together and all the delegates in your area come together and they'll stand up on stage or sit up on stage, and people from the community can fill out a card and they can ask them a question, and they'll listen to it, but it's not going to sway their vote.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. It's pay to play.
Well, they're just doing a performance.
Right. And they'll deny that it's pay to play, and there'll be people like even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's this firebrand who's going to do what she wants to do. There's a certain amount of people that will tell her, you're going to do what we tell you to do because we pay you, we give you the money, because it takes an
Well, we kind of saw that.
Oh, absolutely.
In one way or another,
Yep.
we saw you're going to do what we say. If not, you're going to pay the
You're
price.
going to pay the price.
And man, I'm going to let you finish, but that really begs the question with me of what did they have on her?
Well, it's not a matter of what they have, but when you have that kind of power and that kind of prestige and that sort of relevance in the community, you don't want to lose it. You feel like it's kind of like when a police officer, retires after 40 years of being on the road. They sort of have to reinvent themselves, or anybody who retires after 40 years or something. You sort of have to reinvent yourself. Yeah, you start a podcast, but you have to do something to make yourself relevant. You have to feel like, what, I'm actually part of the solution, not the problem. And so when you have someone who is in a powerful position, like a state representative or a U.S. representative, you have someone who has to be in power and has to be relevant. So they're always looking for the next gig. Always.
Just
so, by the way, I think that this little hand raise, maybe that's a good way that we can incorporate that into the production of the pod.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Are we keeping this?
Really, they've got the same thing on Zoom. Question for you, Dan. So,
yes, sir.
From a local representative election, what I know that you have to have money to win certainly anything national. Maybe Congress too, but where does
I think even the sheriff has to have money.
Well, that's what is it? What do you do with it on the lower? Like, why do you need money for a state rep? Is it to buy ads? Is it to, like, you're not greasing palms with it?
Your signs are about $5 a piece, $3 to $5 a piece, depending on how many you buy in the bulk. Okay, you've got that. You've also got if you qualify, you can do it by signatures, or you can pay a percentage of your yearly salary of that representative salary goes towards the Republican Party or whatever party you represent. Okay. You're going to have to put on little soiree.
Hold on.
So-
Yeah.
Back that up.
Say that again.
Yeah, say that one more time.
Yeah.
You're
You can pay. You can either get a signature to be a Republican representative, or you can pay.
Right. You can pay. What it is the Republican Party. If you're running as a Republican, state of Florida, and you want to run for, say, you want to run for state representative, and the qualifying fee would be like say 10% of your yearly salary, which is like 30-something thousand dollars. So you'd have to pay $3,000 up front to run for it, or you could go out and get signatures of so many people who are registered and who would give you then the ability to say we want him on the ballot. So yeah,
Okay.
you have a choice there. So you would
Kind of reminds me of starting a podcast.
you spend money on your flyers. Flyers are very expensive. Flyers can be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a flyer, and that's to target your audience. That's to hit all the people that voted last time in the Republican race. And you can get these lists from every supervisor of elections in every county that you represent. Now you'll pay so much money for each one, but you can get it. And you also need the Republican Party behind you. Now what they'll do is they're pretty smart. They'll basically sit back and wait until the primary, and then there's only going to be one Republican in the primary and one Democrat in the primary and one independent in the primary if there are that many people running. And so if there's 4 or 5 Republicans running, then the Republican Party will sit back and say, okay, which one's going to win? That's the one we'll back in the primary. Everybody else, we're not going to do anything for you until then. And so the money that you raise is to travel around your district, to have the money travel around your district, also to buy signs, to buy cards, to buy mail outs, to have these dinners where people can come and and ideally you'll get people to support you by saying, hey, we'll throw a dinner in your name, we'll pay for everything, and then we can charge $25 a plate or $50 a plate, or we can,
because they're able to get some of that as a tax write-off. Is that right?
I'm not sure about the tax.
The donors.
I'm not sure.
Well, that's not their goal anyway. They're buying.
They're buying their power. They're buying your vote. They're buying your listening to, because these are typically business owners who have businesses that are prospering well under whatever tax system they have at that particular time. Maybe they know that that the governor in office, or that there's another representative office, or there's a overwhelming majority that says, hey, we want to restructure the tax-based system for these businesses and we want them to pay more money. So of course I'm in a business that makes quite a bit of money. I'm roofing business. So I'm going to go after this representative. I'm going to say, here's a check for X amount of dollars. Now that's the thing too, is you can only give so much money per quarter to the candidate. You can only
an individual can.
An individual can. And then you have PACs, which are political action committees, which means there's no limit to what you can give there, and you can give as much or as little or whatever. And that's where your big league, like your U.S. representatives, that's where they get their money from, the PACs. And you can take the PAC money and you can spend it on anything you want to spend it on. The other money that's given, you have to make it account for. You have to do quarterly reports. You have to let the Department of State in the state of Florida know exactly what you're doing. So the campaign finance and sunshine laws and all that keeps you from getting rich off of it, and then basically walk away with a lot of money. And so
who are these people, Mr. Dan? Like, I understand we've established that it's pay to play. I mean, and really that shouldn't be a shock to anyone. That just kind of is human nature. Whoever gets you there, you gotta respect the girl that brought you to the dance.
That's exactly right.
And if that's whoever. Who are these people? Like, I understand there's gonna be the people that for whatever reason are gonna donate their own personal money to these politicians, but who are the PACs, and maybe who are the corporate donors? So getting outside of my grandma and my mom that would send a check to Republican Party, who are the members of these PACs and what are they?
Any business. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What was the second part of the question?
And what are who are the corporate players in here? Like back home, Cokes are, if you're a Republican, you have to kiss the Coke ring in Kansas and in Wichita.
I got you.
But the Coke that's more than just a person. That's also a business and kind of dynasty type thing
Yeah.
that they have going on out there.
Well, you have that here in Florida too. You have certain businesses like Anderson, Columbia. They're a huge, huge company that makes millions and millions of dollars off of government contracts rebuilding the roads. So they do a lot of road construction, a lot of construction. So they they do that. There's other companies that do like farming, big farm companies.
Monsanto.
Yes, now big pharmaceutical companies also, and they have money. They, in fact, if any of your bigger companies have a government liaison, a lobbyist, so to speak, that works for them, that all they do is they go and they basically wine and dine these people who are elected officials. And so when a law is
They're also writing bills.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
writing the bills for these people
yeah,
to introduce.
absolutely, all the time, all the time. There's companies, Fortune 500 companies who take bills over to the Capitol and say, "Hey, this is a bill we want to introduce," and they'll say, "Okay, fine." They'll put their name on it. They'll introduce it as a bill. You'll think the member did it, but they didn't. And so,
Right.
and they don't say, "Okay, you do this, and we'll give you so much money." You just know there's an unwritten rule that when you do that, and when you're ready to get money from that person, they're going to give you cash. In fact, here in Florida, they have what they call check night, like a check you write, and it's called check night because it's the night of checks. And this is how it works: the representatives go to Tallahassee. It's the night before they start the session. You can't give any money to the representatives during session; it's illegal. Okay, but session goes on for about 60 days, sometimes a little longer if the governor they can't get their minds made up. They'll go into a longer session. So check night is when you go over to Tallahassee, our capital, and you go to all these parties. You hit every party. I mean, you're just like the belle of the ball. You're hitting all the parties at all the major hotels and the conference centers, and you're going to these places and you're shaking hands, and people they'll hand you an envelope with checks. And so by the end of the night, you will have raised $25,000-$30,000, which is a lot of money for someone who's just a state representative. So you get all these checks, but with those checks comes a certain amount of you're going to take my call when I call you, or when I come to Tallahassee, I'm going to have FaceTime with you because I gave you money. Okay, and so that's the way it works. That's the way it's always worked. It'll always work that way. You and I really don't have a voice over there. It's rare that you'll have voice because even if you had a voice, even if say I was your representative and I said, "Hey Clayton, you say, hey, I don't like this thing you're doing, blah 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 blah," and I'm like, you know what, I agree with you, I don't like it either. Well then, 10 seconds after you walk out of my office, big corporation comes in and says, "Hey, yeah, we want you to vote on that." Well, my constituents don't like it. Well, we don't really care what your constituents like. Tell them what you want to do.
That's right.
But you're going to vote on it, and you're going to vote on it because if you don't vote on it, then your next election, there's somebody waiting in the wings to replace you, and every politician knows that. And so it's not about a representation for the people; it's a representation for those who can afford it.
When I was in the Navy, when the F-14 Tomcat was decommissioned.
Oh, wow.
And the reason the F-14 Tomcat, this was not a secret. It was actually discussed in even leadership classes on like how to understand the contract process, how contracts work in the military. The reason the F-14 was decommissioned was not because it was outpaced by the it was the dominant fighter of its time. It wasn't outpaced by the F-18. It wasn't, there was no technological disadvantages. The problem with the F-14 Tomcat was that it was made, besides the M61A1 gun, which was made by G&E, the entire F-14 Tomcat was made in the state of New York by Northrop Grumman. Northrop Grumman assembled the entire F-18 engines, landing gear, frame, electronics, avionics. Everything was made in the state of New York. The F-18, made by Boeing and other companies, whatever since then, but mostly Boeing, was spread out over 14 states, or now I think it's like 30 states. And so because the frame is made here, the landing gears are made here, they source their tires from a contractor in this state. They get the pins from here. And it's all assembled in this spot. Well, now you have congressmen from all these different states, 14 to like 30 states, pitching, we want the F-18. but you only have representatives from New York that are saying we want the Tomcat. And it was pretty well known in the Navy that was the death knell of the Tomcat. It wasn't because of our technological prowess or our national security, is because more congressmen were going to be getting more money from the tax dollars.
Right.
That was the only consideration.
That happens all the time. It's just like this latest bill that the Democrats wanted to put into the budget. You know, they wanted like $1.5 trillion to be given to all these things that absolutely are ridiculous, stupid stuff. But they're doing it because there are people that they represent who want a piece of the money. Congress really is probably the biggest money laundering company in the world because that's all it's done. Joe Biden was making $80 million that was being funneled through buying paintings of his son's paintings, like
his son.
$1 million for paintings. I mean, really, seriously? Okay. Yeah. So
sitting on the board of these Ukrainian companies, Ukrainian power energy companies.
Exactly. And it's all about that because like Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas,
Raytheon,
the big ones, you know, the big names, they make billions and billions of dollars off of the American people because we're the taxpayers, you know, but it's Congress who decides. And
we don't have a choice.
No, we don't have a choice. And so
we don't have any option.
Congresswomen who represent these states where they have these huge military complexes, they're getting kickbacks all the time. You know, that's how they stay in office. Because, you know, it's like Nancy Pelosi. She's worth $300 million. She's leaving office. AOC was like $100,000 in debt, you know, and then, you know, now she's worth what, $3, $4, $5 million, you know, and so
Dan Crenshaw did the same thing.
Yeah. So
Dan Crenshaw came in there and made some money.
And that's what they do. And so the deck is stacked really against the American people. We don't really have a say-so in our government. We think we have a say-so, but we don't. So, yeah, there's a lot going on.
No,
we don't know about.
And that's another level to this too that we've kind of already hit on is there's a class of people that it's rules for thee and not for me, but that even is too simplistic to describe it. There's a level, I mean, Epstein, at least the whole story of what Epstein represents is a huge... No, of course not. Most of it has been, if they were smart, the real evidence has been destroyed years ago. Yeah. But that is a shining light on the class of the type of person who would, you know, go to an island and engage in these sick acts. Or you hear about the paintings that these people have in their New York townhomes that are filled with these like weird, and they mentioned the artist by name, and you could look it up. I mean, your computer would get a virus just looking up these artists. But it's, you know, sick, like child abuse paintings that they call art that these people that they're having these dinner parties with have in their home. And I was listening to a podcast tonight by Daryl Cooper, but not Daryl Cooper. Is the author, or he's the guy who does the Martyr Made podcast. Yeah, Daryl Cooper. But he was talking about Epstein's like 100% ties to intelligence actors, whether that's people in the English intelligence or the American intelligence or Israeli intelligence. Like Ashnagi Assad was this guy who was in charge of moving weapons during the Iran-Contra. He was our Israeli liaison. A lot of you might have more expertise than me on this, but my understanding of the Iran-Contra, or part of it, was that we wanted to sell some weapons to Iran to fund these Contras down in South America, the Sinestras, or what were they called?
Sandinistas.
Daniel Ortega. Sandinistas. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And we used Israel as a broker for this weapons deal because both of those things were highly illegal and could even be considered treasonous at the time. Because Iran was under the control of the Contra at that point. And so we considered them extremists. We called them terrorists. So we were selling arms or at least arms technology to a terrorist organization to fund another terrorist organization just for the sole reason of regime change in South America. Because we wanted to overthrow a democratically elected government that we didn't like. Right. And so Epstein was involved in the mechanics of that. Like decades before he got, before he was brought to light on this, he was involved in money laundering. That was after he left Bear Stearns. It was that guy Ashton Khashoggi, who was a Israeli weapons dealer, and that was that part. But that's what that Epstein thing was a big light on. There's like, no matter what Tulsi Gabbard says, or no matter what Fox News tells you, Obama is not going to be convicted and go to prison. Like, no one ever thought Hillary Clinton was going to be convicted and go to prison, even though that's what they'll tell you. And very clearly they have committed crimes. Absolutely. I mean, you could see some crimes, right, if not just information with the whole email hard drive thing. I mean, she just violated some pretty blatant black and white laws that we know about intelligent or about classifications, but she was never going to be punished for that, because there's a level of people where I mean, there's just a level of society, and it's in church and it's in politics too. This is the real Illuminati, whether it used to be called the Illuminati, or maybe that was over in the 1500s and we just have a different name for it now. And even the people who are in it don't know that they're just in this version of the Illuminati.
Oh, sure. There's a shadow government, whether you want to believe it or not. People think, if you say something like that, they go ahead and deduct about 50 IQ. But there's a shadow government that runs this world, not this country, but the world. And it's like a game. And it's like the CIA. Everybody knew the CIA was running drugs out of Afghanistan, poppies. They were funneling money. I mean, that's how they raised money. They did it during the Vietnam War. That was one of the biggest reasons we were in Vietnam. It was, but people don't want to admit that. But our government,
to protect that trade.
And so these people, they're all part of a pyramid, and they all sort of support at the bottom of the pyramid the top tier people. And if you remove these people at the bottom, the pyramid's going to fall. So people like Epstein, they had to get rid of him because he was a liability.
He became.
They had to get rid of him, and just like with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and all the people that were involved in the Epstein Island, and anyone who had anything to do. In fact, John Roberts, the Supreme Court Justice, he's been to the island numerous times. Okay, I can see going one time and then realizing, this is not for me. This is kind of sick. When you go for the second time, I'm sorry, you can't. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are involved in the pedophilia movement. It's been a huge movement for years. Not started, but it's been huge in Hollywood for years and years and years. And it was uncovered a little bit by Corey Ames and Corey Feldman and a few other people. But most people don't want to say anything because they know what side their bread is buttered on.
Well, that tactic, that tool of using someone's nefarious fantasies, their predilections that they have, you see it all the time in like Game of Thrones, or about back in Rome. If this guy was a boy lover and they didn't want him to come out as a boy lover, so they'd hold that against him. It's a tactic as old as time, but it's also very documented in American practices. And it goes back to the first instance post-war that I know of is Operation Midnight Climax. Have you ever heard of that, Mr. Dan?
Never heard of it.
Operation Midnight Climax. I've talked about it a few times on the show. It's getting a lot of miles now. It was it started actually with the OSS, or the players in it started with the OSS, but after 47, the OSS turned into the CIA.
Right.
And it was headed by this agent named George H. White. George H.W. George H. White. He was a narcotics super. I don't need to drag it out, but he was a CIA agent. He got recruited to be an OSS agent at first, and then a CIA agent later on. And his main job was experimenting on it. It evolved later, but his beginning job with the agency was experimenting with truth serums. And it started off as this super concentrated THC that they were calling liquid THC, but it was actually like super concentrated cannabis, or THC extracts, and also mixed with like really early versions of tranquilizers and like veterinary products. They would make like these kind of like witch's brew almost to see. That's what he was doing. He was experimenting to see what would be the perfect truth serum, and he was experimenting on his old narcotics targets. So like mafiosos and people who were his targets, so like his old informants, his old drug dealers that who he used to shake down, he would go experiment on them with this liquid THC and try to get information out of it. Well, after the war, scientists started bringing in LSD, and so he was running experiments that started off on subways. So it was a progression. It went from that liquid THC to then he was using LSD on his targets, and they were telling him their social security number. They were telling him all these information that like what their bosses were doing, information that they knew could have them killed if they were talking about it, and it was just like pouring out of them like water. And they're even saying like, I don't know why I'm saying this. I can't stop talking. And well, later that evolved into an operation in San Francisco where he was cut to the end. This is, by the way, open information by Freedom of Information Act. So there's a whole podcast done by iHeartRadio, a podcast series called Operation Midnight Climax, which I use as a lot of source for original sources when I was making my own version of it. But he was targeting politicians and like college kids and like the early leaders of communist movements, American citizens, also early politicians that the McCarthy era thought were commies, American citizens. He was getting them dosed, unbeknownst to them, on LSD, was enticing them to have sex with prostitutes in these brothels, and was filming it or taking pictures of it through one-way glass and getting them to change their vote, getting them to do this. And it wasn't just politicians, it was members of society. So like members in early media, members in corporation. This was a CIA operation in the 1950s, and that technically ended in the 1970s. But that's also exactly Jeffrey Epstein's operation. Like I'm describing. So like you said, this is a tale as old as time. Sure, but also very specifically in American intelligence, this is a tactic that we use.
Well, we do that with spies too. That's
yeah,
we have like women spies are picked because of their beauty, because they go and they'll sleep with someone on the other team, and then they'll get pillow talk, and they'll get all this information. That it's always been used. Sex sells, and when you have young people, sex is it's like when you're young, it's sex is everything. Sex is at the forefront of your brain until you hit about 50, and then when you're 50, it's more about power. And so you have these politicians who are too old for not too old for sex, but that's not their predilection, as you said earlier. It's more of the power. And so they've had years of being sleeping with the enemy, and so now everybody's connected. The judges,
all these chickens are coming home to roost.
And so nobody. It's like me and you and Justin were to go out somewhere and commit a crime. We're not going to tell on each other because it means we won't go down together. So
because we're not snitches.
Exactly.
That's right.
Snitches, what snitches are bitches and they get stitches. But if we did something like that, just like with the Epstein thing, nobody's going to say anything because they know if they say something, somebody's going to say, "Yeah, I saw you in the room next to me."
Well, Johnson is coming out and pretty much said that's why that was his main argument against passing.
There has to be amendments to this. We can't just throw this information out there.
Yeah, we can't just let this information
out. People know exactly what we've been doing. Yeah, exactly. Because honestly, though, I will say this: I believe even if the people knew, most people don't care. Most people don't care. It's a handful of people that'll say, "Yeah, we don't like that. We're going to do something about it." But 99% of the people are like, "Yeah, I don't care. Whatever. Whatever." Because we've become so complacent in America that they could say, "Yeah, we had sex with little children over there and we did all these things. It's okay." Because nobody cares. Nobody really cares anymore. So I think even if they find out the truth, it's only going to matter to a few people.
Well, I have realized that most people think it's just a conspiracy theory. Like
course.
the people that don't think like me, like when I talk to normies out in the
Yeah.
world, they treat it almost like how with less validity than UFOs get
Yeah.
today, the Epstein
Oh, sure.
files get treated by
Right.
normies
Because
today.
nobody wants to really believe that that is capable. When I was working for the congressman, one of the specialties of her office that she wanted me to get involved in was the sex trade with children. And she said, "Can you do that?" And I'm like, "I'm not real crazy about the idea because I don't want to know these things. I don't want them in my head. But yeah, I'll do it." So I had a conversation with a U.S. attorney, and he told me that he goes around the country talking to sheriffs in these small towns. And what he'll do is the day before he gets there, he'll stay in a hotel somewhere. He'll get on the internet and he'll bring up all these pictures and things of children that you can have that can be brought to his hotel in that little small town, and he'll print them all out and everything. And then he goes the next day and he talks to the sheriff and he says, "Do you have a problem with this in your county?" And they're like, "No, no, no, we don't have a problem with this. So, we're a small county. We don't have a problem with this." And he starts handing them the piece of paper and he says, "This is what I got on the internet last night. They were going to bring them to my hotel here in this town." And they're like, "What? Oh my God, I can't believe that." Well, it's because most of us don't want to think that that kind of evil persists. That kind of evil.
Because we're not in that
Exactly.
world. We wouldn't
Yeah.
know that
You have
exists.
when you have billions of dollars and you have planes and you have yachts and you have women and you have money and you have gold and you have power and you have all these things. The only thing you don't have in your toy box are the predilections, these twisted predilections that these people have. And
Right.
we have in our community, in our society, we worship youth and we worship beauty.
Yes. And they want
And
to
we
destroy
right,
that.
exactly. And so,
That's the ultimate godlike power for them.
absolutely. And so I think that even with the Epstein stuff being released, nobody's going to give a crap. Nobody cares. It'll be last week's news, and then something else will take its cycle.
J-Dub, did you have any
No, that's just super depressing. I think you're 100% correct. I think that probably I think that people I wouldn't say they don't care about the abuse of children, but I think that our blindness to our politics overshadows it. So if I think people would care about the abuse of children, but we just don't want to believe that our team could do it.
Well,
You know what I mean?
let me say this. I'm not saying that people wouldn't care. I mean, I don't like to think about it, and I don't think about it because I know there's nothing I can do about it. I can't stop that from happening. It happens all the time. Do you know the number one place in America right now for sex trade for children? What state would you think it would be? You'd think New York
Well,
City, right?
Kansas is pretty
No,
close. Kansas, Oklahoma,
Atlanta,
Texas,
yeah.
Atlanta,
Atlanta.
Georgia, the number one in the world. You know that we're the
Hmm.
number one purveyor of that kind of sickness.
Yeah, but also there's different definitions. Don't worry, I'm not going to start defending.
I know.
Okay,
But
were you an apologist?
There are different definitions of human trafficking, though, is what I was going to say. Because when I was an interdiction cop, I was catching van loads and one time a U-Haul truckload full of people. Like they were all I assume they were Mexican. They were coming from Mexico, but these were people who were coming around here, obviously in a clandestine manner, right? They were sneaking over here. Sometimes I've talked about this on here before, but not to be a bummer. There were like kids in there sitting in the back of a van that was clearly overstuffed, and the back of the van smelled like piss. They'd been driving for days, so I consider that, at least back then, and not getting into the immigration debate, but I considered that human trafficking. I was like, oh, I am witnessing the trafficking of humans. And I would call in ICE back then and be like, hey, dude, I got what you're looking for. I got a U-Haul full of these people. And they're like, back then, they're like, have they committed any felonies? I'm like, you mean other than human trafficking?
Right? Yeah, other than coming to the country illegally.
Yeah. No. And they're like, oh, well, kick them. And I was like, well, welcome to Kansas, folks. Well, I mean, I said that. I ended up saying that more times than once to illegal folks on the highway. Is welcome to Kansas. I consider that human trafficking, but also the statute of human trafficking in Kansas was prostitution. I mean, adults engaging in consensual prostitution was considered human trafficking. And so even if that, like just comparing a 30-year-old an adult consenting woman who is willingly engaged selling services for money is not the same thing as what Jeffrey Epstein was doing.
Right, and I agree, and I want to make that difference is all that I told you was based on just child trafficking for sex.
Okay, child
labor,
trafficking.
It was just child sex trafficking. The number one place is Atlanta, Georgia, and America is the number one purveyor of it. So it goes on.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't mean to say that people wouldn't care. People do care. It's kind of like the commercials when the miracle telethon comes on, and you see the little children with cancer, and you see the commercials, and of course we get a little emotional, and we might cry a little bit, we might tear up or whatever, and then the next commercial comes along, it's selling us Crest toothpaste, and we've forgotten about the little child who was bald-headed with the IV in their head. We don't really care. It's not that we don't really care. It's just that we have only so much that we can care about in a 24-hour period. And so we choose, we triage, so to speak, what we're going to care about and what we're not going to care about. And because I know that I can't do anything about child trafficking or child sex trafficking, I don't think about it because it's too painful for me, because I don't want to go there, because then, what am I going to do? Then I'm just going to be.
Well, and also you got to go to work. You got your own 9 to 5. You got your own kids. Right. You got your own bills. Right. You have to, manage your own life. Yeah. And so, I mean, you're definitely more informed than you would have been earlier. But if it does get into your sphere of knowledge, like there is child trafficking, you don't have enough horsepower to give it at that point.
Yeah, and it's not these sleazy people on Skid Row bums that are trafficking these children. These are billionaires who have they have pit houses in these high-rise cities, in big cities like New York and Atlanta and LA and places like that, where they just have these children shipped to them, brought to them, and they're trapped in these places. So these are wealthy, influential people, which goes back to what we were originally talking about. They're all connected. Judges, congressmen,
I was about to say, I can tell you a lot of people who are buying those high-rise townhouses in Atlanta are foreigners. And those high-rise townhouses, a lot of them are going empty. Like they're just sitting vacant because these places, I mean, they're money laundering. It's people who are buying American property and causing these super artificial price rises, by the way, by them doing this, by them giving $30,000 over asking price just to get it,
right?
Type thing. That was more going on in 2021, but it was, it's still, we're living in the remnants of that now, of the super artificial price inflation. And I know in Atlanta, it was foreign nationals that were doing it. It was a lot of these super $1 million, whatever, high-rise townhomes that were being bought by someone from Eastern Europe or maybe the Middle East or maybe Asia. And it was just sitting. They would never get the power. They wouldn't get the utilities turned on. It was just a place for them to park their money.
Now, I will say this, and this is a little segue, but it does have to connect with the Jeffrey Epstein. I had dinner with someone the other night, and they're connected to politicians, and we were talking politics, and they said that I'd never heard this before, but they said that the Charlie Kirk assassination was done by Trump, because Charlie Kirk was going to expose the Epstein files in public. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but I just thought
that is a juicy
Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard that one. I've heard lots of
that's an interesting
of who did.
That's kind of a segue into something that I wanted to talk about here. We've got about 18 minutes left, so maybe we can transition now to current events. Have you heard anything about
For sure.
Candace Owens receiving substantial, significant death threats? Or how do I want to say it? I'm not sure how I want to say it. But have you heard about her death threats?
The only thing I've heard about Candace Owens is that she's come out basically an anti-Semitism, anti-Semite. She's
That's not true.
That's the only thing I've heard, though.
I know you've heard that, but that is not true. That is a manipulation of the facts.
But you never know what's true or not. You never know what's fake news. Or
I know
because
because
the attacks on her life, no, or the attempt or whatever. No, I haven't heard that.
Okay, let me.
I'm frustrated about that. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I saw this on Twitter the other day. I saw it on Threads, but so she posted an urgent post on yesterday. It says, 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. After determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, I opened it up and now... in short, this person claims that the Macrons have executed upon and paid for my assassination. Yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team in national... I'm not sure, intervention group. I'm told that there is one Israeli that is on this assassination squad, and the plans were formalized. Candace further wrote, again, this person provided concrete proof that they are well placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Foreign Legion Brigade with multi-state involvement. She says journalist Xavier Poussard's life is also at risk. This is deadly serious, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, it sounds like she has received credible threats of her assassination. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I believe that. I could definitely see it coming. Candace has been portrayed by parts of the Republican Party and parts of the MAGA. This is part of that civil war I was talking of earlier. She has been betrayed by Shapiro and Levine and these I don't know if Levine falls into that, but these like pro-Israel members of MAGA who I would say most of them used to be never Trumpers. Most of these guys like Shapiro and even JD Vance and the members that are kind of turning on Tucker and Candace, these people were not the original MAGA. They were never Trumpers. But they are calling her an anti-Semite, and they are saying she's like Nick Fuentes, and they are saying it's like Ted Cruz turning on Tucker Carlson because Tucker Carlson pointed out that Ted Cruz takes $1.9 million from AIPAC and advocates more for Israel than he does his constituents in Texas.
Wow.
Tucker pointed that out, and so now everything Tucker says is anti-Semitic, according to Ted Cruz.
So those are that's kind of the playbook is they'll cancel or they'll do whatever. You know, Ted Cruz will sound the horn, rally the troops, whatever. Do you feel like
Tucker's a racist?
I feel like that's not going to work anymore. You know what I mean? Like
it's losing its
played
steam.
out.
That's the age we're in.
It's played out.
Well, we're in that age, man. The veil is thinning, at least in some regards, definitely, of that playbook is getting exposed. And what's funny is it's that playbook that they were criticizing on the left of, if you don't agree with us, we're going to call you racist. We're going to call you bigot. We're going to call you this or that. Well, that's what they were criticizing these college people, these college students and the blue hairs doing a couple years ago. But now Tucker Carlson points out some hard facts that Ted Cruz doesn't want to hear about how he's representing Israel more than his constituents. And it's racist. He's a Nazi.
Oh.
That's what they're doing with Candace Owens. That's exactly what they did with her.
I always liked Candace. I used to listen to her all the time. I love listening to her.
She goes hard in the paint on some stuff.
I like Shapiro too, but I haven't heard either one of them in months. I just haven't. I used to listen to Tucker Carlson. I like him too, but
he's got a very good show still going on Spotify and on everywhere. I listen to Tucker shows. Yeah.
I feel like both Candace and Tucker went to the same school of media or something. The way they talk, the way they deliver their, I can't copy them, but you know what I'm saying? Like just their cadence and their tone.
I like Tucker's laugh.
Can't stand it.
Yeah.
Just starts giggling.
That's it. Oh shoot.
No, Candace is the product. She's like one of the early pioneers of alternative media because Tucker came from Fox News and even CNN and I think NBC. Like he's worked at a bunch of the big ones and he had his 30 plus career in journalism. Candace started off as a Twitter. She was a Twitter commentator and would talk about celebrity gossip. And then she got involved with the political side and she was real controversial because she was anti BLM whenever that stuff came out. Yeah. And so the liberals called her a Nazi because she was anti BLM because she saw how it was co-opted and it wasn't authentic and yada yada. Well, then she did the same thing with Antifa and Ben Shapiro brought her into his media company.
That was Daily Wire.
And the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro brought Candace into the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro ended up firing her because she converted. She was, I guess, had been a lifelong Protestant, but became super religious, got like bit by the religious bug and became an ardent Catholic. And her husband's a Catholic and they are like, super Catholic. That's part of her identity now. Well, back during October 7th and maybe even before then, but I know it was definitely around the October 7th event, she came out with the stance of Christ is king. She was like, I won't take orders from anyone. I only have one king and his name is Christ. And that was the beginning of her end at Daily Wire. She was fired, I think less than a week after she took that stance, Christ is king. And that was Ben Shapiro and that group turning on her.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. She came out with her stance called Christ is king. And she had a series on it and launched it on the Daily Wire. And that's what ended up getting her kicked out of the Daily Wire. So yeah, they call her an anti-Semite, and if anti-Semite means anti that shit, anti Ben Shapiro, anti Benjamin Netanyahu, then sure. But I don't think that's what that means. I think that's anti-Zionist, anti-government, anti-authoritarian, and definitely anti-foreign interference in American politics. I'm anti that.
Oh yeah. People don't realize that even the Israelis spy on America. The Israelis
that they what?
The Israelis spy on America all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not anti-Israel at all. I love Israel. I think Netanyahu's pretty awesome. But countries spy on each other all the time. We spy on them, they spy on us. It's just the way it is. But if honestly, if the American people knew the truth of how things go on in our politics, in our especially our national politics, they would burn the place down. I've seen the inside, and it's like going to the sausage factory. You don't want to eat sausage afterwards. I'm so disappointed and so disillusioned by politics and by politicians. I don't think you can be a effective politician, without being a narcissist. I think you need to be a narcissist to be an effective politician. And so anybody who's not a narcissist, they won't win. And if they do win, they're not going to be there long. Because
maybe that's why MTG. No, that's not it. I think she doesn't have a problem with her ego. I think she's got a very.
I think she does too. And I think you would have to really to be effective because you go up there to Congress and they tell you right away that you're going to vote the way the party wants you to vote. You're not going to vote the way your conscience says. You're going to vote exactly the way we tell you. Same with the House here in Florida too. So politics aside, the older I get, the less I want to deal with politics, the less I want to deal with religion. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's the more, like you say, the older you get, the more. And some people, it's not necessarily tied with age either, because some people will go their entire lifetime and just refuse to see what's right in front of them. I guess most people do, actually. Right. Most people go their entire life and refuse to see refuse to critically think. This whole time I've been kind of weaving them in and out because they just go together so well, is the similarities between corruption in politics and corruption in religion. in the theological institutes is the same thing. It's a chase after power. It's a misrepresentation of your goals. Right. It's a misrepresentation of your service to the public. Definitely. Yeah. And there's always what you see, and then there's what happens in the back. Right. Like, yep, that's the television version, and this is how we really play ball.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if Justin is going to come back on, but this is actually kind of perfect timing. Mr. Dan, he just texted me. He's not going to be able to make it back. He's having his computer just shut down.
No. Well, we can wrap it up here.
That's what we're going to do. Well, I'm not going to spill the beans just yet, but if you stay tuned this long, and we're going to chop this up into shorts, Mr. Dan Hartley is going to have some projects coming in the future that I'm going to let him announce, but stay tuned. There's big things coming in the future. Mr. Dan, you're always welcome back. I know I speak for Justin. You're always welcome. I would like to have you on more just to as a regular member of Lawless family, I think. Oh, here we go.
Thank you. All right, there you go.
We're signing off.
Yay. Well, thank you both. It's always a pleasure and honor to share the mic with you, and thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit of my experience. And of course,
Okay, like I said, we're Mr. Dan's going to have big things coming. I'm going to let him introduce that himself later. In the meantime, interact with us, you, the listener, you, the watcher, the consumer of this fine art. Interact with us by liking, hearting, sharing, comment, and participate in these community engagements and Lawless Confessionals and Lawless Bible Study. I've already beat that enough. I don't need to go into it anymore. But engage, y'all. And in the meantime, between now and then, this is Clayton, my homeboy, my brother Justin, and special guest, Mr. Dan. We'll catch you guys later.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Later, all. Sorry for the technical difficulties, by the way.
Oh, it's all good. You came at the best time.